If you're like me, you're probably wondering where the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen is headed. And as we look at the story, Sukuna has most of the main cast on the ropes and is putting the work on pretty much every main character right now. And we don't know who's going to defeat him or what his plan is. Although today in this video I want to discuss what the ending might entail, who will defeat Sukuna, if anyone at all, and if the merger will take place. As we move forward in this part of the video, a spoiler warning since we will go over recent chapters from the manga and future predictions based off what has happened recently. After the defeat of Gojo, Sukuna has kind of taken control of the entire battle, with new characters stepping up every chapter to try to take him down. First, we had Kashimo, who was glazed very, very hard, but put up a pretty good fight, actually, in my opinion, against Sukuna, using his one-time curse technique, the mythical beast Amber, which is kind of a ridiculous technique when you think about it. Being able to only use it one time really was a disadvantage, but at least he got to use it against Sukuna. Although this fight was really, really short, leaving Sukuna pretty much with a buff afterwards, and Kashimo nothing to show for it. But I think this will be one of those fights that, once it gets animated, is going to be really awesome, and will definitely kind of power up Kashimo. Obviously, probably not too much, but it'll make him look a little better than the manga had to show for him. Personally, what I find extremely interesting about this fight is how it ends, and how Sukuna praises Kashimo after he's been defeated and been slashed apart into a million pieces. He kind of gives him his props, and we don't really see this too much with Sukuna other than with Jogo from Shibuya, where after he's defeated, he gives him his props and calls him strong. And this is a really interesting trait we see from Sukuna, is he really does value strength, and nobody has really given him that challenge that Gojo did. But we do see him praise stronger characters like Kashimo and Jogo, and I think that goes to show that Kashimo was really strong. He was just way in over his head and had no idea how powerful Sukuna really was. The defeat of Kashimo, we get an interesting line that Sukuna says to Kashimo, and he says, "If I want to eat, I eat. If I see an eyesore, I kill it. And if it entertains me, I throw it a bone." And as we'll see with some of the upcoming fighters that are about to enter the fight, he does throw some of these characters a bone that interests him. Although we kind of know Sukuna is holding back at this point, he hasn't used any of his techniques that we think he has left in his arsenal. For example, the flame arrow that he used against Jogo and Maharaga. And he could still have that, and he hasn't used it, and there's plenty of other techniques we think he could have that he hasn't pulled out yet. And Urame, in one of the more recent chapters, actually says that he has been holding back. So with this knowledge, we'll go into the next fight and see if they had any chance to defeat Sukuna. The third round against Sukuna begins with a domain exploding above the battlefield, and JJK's very own Saul Goodman and Yuji Itadori coming down to face Sukuna, and Sukuna is not impressed with the two sorcerers who have been sent to deal with him. Although, as we'll learn in a flashback, this was actually a curated plan after Kashimo's defeat, which was assumed by most of the other sorcerers. And Higuruma was chosen to go in because of his domain expansion, which could potentially take away Sukuna's curse technique, and we'll see how that works out for them in a little bit here. So the actual fight begins with Mei Mei launching some of her crows at Sukuna, where she mentions that Gojo, Kenjaku, and now Sukuna all avoided her crows, and she wonders what would happen if they had actually hit, as Higuruma swings his hammer at Sukuna, and Yuji rushes him with his new arms and lands a few punches that actually seem to phase Sukuna a little bit, and this is yet to be fully explained, but it seems Yuji has some sort of power-up with those new additions to his forearms. Higuruma then opens his domain, which is called Deadly Sentencing, and says, "We're having a retrial." And Sukuna is now caught within the domain, and the Shikigami that lives within, called Judge-Man, states that Yuji is accused under suspicion of committing mass murder in Shibuya. So this is related to the incidents that Sukuna caused within Shibuya and all the deaths that occurred after he fought Maharaga and Jogo. And Higuruma states that he did not kill anyone and that the real culprit is Sukuna. And this trial goes about as well as you would expect, as we'll see. Since Yuji had already been tried before for the murders in Shibuya, this is technically a retrial, and Sukuna is separated from Yuji in regards to their body, saying that Sukuna had control over Yuji's body in Shibuya and is thus responsible for all the murders that occurred there. Sukuna could care less about this trial, and frankly is only interested in Higuruma's executioner sword, and Sukuna is given the death penalty and confiscation, although we'll see the confiscation didn't really apply to Sukuna's curse technique. It was his tool that he had gained, the Kamutoke, which is kind of a weird tool, but that was taken away from him, and I don't think Sukuna really cared about that thing at all. So his slashes are still intact, and he is as strong as ever. We then see some more sorcerers coming in to jump Sukuna. We have Kusakabe helping Higuruma tank the slashes. Choso and Ino join the battle as Sukuna challenges the sorcerers to a race, and he blitzes Choso, unfortunately donating him, and this was super sad to see at the time. We'll see what happens to him later. And Ino uses Nanami's curse tool to attack Sukuna with a 7-to-3 ratio technique. Super awesome moment. But these guys aren't doing much damage, and they're just trying to help buy time so Higuruma can attack Sukuna with the Executioner's Sword. It is explained that the Executioner's Sword will be a great way to separate Megami from Sukuna, since it'll only kill the person who was convicted of the crime. At the end of this chapter, Higuruma is then compared to Gojo. Unfortunately, he will not be the only victim who is compared to Gojo, but he is here. Sukuna then goes to call Higuruma by name, which is really interesting since he usually doesn't do this, and immediately attacks him and goes after Yuji, insulting him as usual. Sukuna gets rid of Yuji for now, and Higuruma and Sukuna engage in vicious combat with each other as Sukuna chops off Higuruma's arm and wants him to heal himself. He's throwing him a bone here. He's trying to keep him in the fight and doesn't want to kill him immediately. And Higuruma kind of fakes him out and uses reverse curse technique to heal his arm as he tosses the sword to Yuji to go in for the kill on Sukuna. Going into chapter 248, we see that Yuji missed Sukuna. This is really unfortunate, but I don't think anyone expected him to die here. Higuruma is presumed dead at this point, and Sukuna attacks Yuji right away and recognizes that he probably has reverse curse technique since all the slashes would have killed someone who wasn't able to heal themselves. And this is a really important part of this chapter, is where Wee and Kiara show up to take Higuruma's body off the battlefield. This is a big reason for the cope of Gojo coming back. It's assumed that they're taking the fallen sorcerers off the field and bringing them to someone like Shoko who can possibly heal them. So this is a big part of people thinking Gojo might come back, is these two. And it even is recognized by Sukuna that they took Gojo's corpse. So that's an interesting tidbit and definitely giving people more hope as the story continues on. Not saying anything, is going to happen, but it's a possibility. Sukuna then kind of spaces out for a minute, saying, "Did that sorcerer's death disappoint me?" He does think about all of his ideals and how Yuji himself is so weak, but still putting up a fight against him because of his ideals. This is where Sukuna finds some motivation again. He wants to mince Yuji's ideals to bits and just destroy him. And at this point in the story, Kenjaku's insurance finds Sukuna. And this gives him the ability to activate the merger whenever he wants. And this is a very pivotal moment in the story. Since Sukuna does have the power to activate the merger, he still hasn't yet, but it seems like something that is inevitable and is going to be something that is strong enough and worthy enough for Sukuna's time. We then get Yuta's epic return as Rika throws Sukuna into a wall and Yuta begins attacking him with his katana. This is a really awesome scene. It's great to have Yuta back after he went and cut off Kenjaku's head. As Yuta attacks him, he opens up his domain, which is called All-Encompassing Unequivocal Love, which of course people have had their opinions of the name, but I think it looks awesome, and it's just a great domain. Sukuna opens the hollow wicker basket to counter, and their fight inside the domain begins. Yuta's first attack in the domain is Thin Icebreaker, which actually comes from Uro, and is an attack that can bend reality, basically, and send opponents flying. Since Uro's ability kind of relates to manipulating space in the sky, that is the first attack that Yuta uses against Sukuna, and each katana in the domain represents a different attack, so Yuta has a bunch of different abilities to his disposal and just adds to the impressiveness of his domain. At this point in the fight, Sukuna recognizes that Yuji kind of has this new soul punch that he's going to use to try to separate Megami from Sukuna, and Yuta is running around using his different techniques attacking Sukuna, while he has to use two of his arms to maintain the hollow wicker basket as defense. So they plan this out really well, and they are going at Sukuna in this part of the battle. Even Rika throws Yuji like a shot put, and it's just super awesome. And this fight is really brutal. They are beating on Sukuna, and it's looking pretty good at this point of the fight. Yuta hits Sukuna with Inumaki's don't move technique, and they keep fighting Sukuna as he starts hitting him with slashes again, and Sukuna thinks of what techniques Yuta has used and what he hasn't revealed yet. Sukuna asks them what they've been up to in the past month. Yuji, of course being Yuji, says hard work and determination, and Yuta says we cheated, which is kind of funny in the middle of the fight that they're talking like this still. He admits that if Gojo hadn't taken away Sukuna's abilities and kind of weakened him, that they would have been annihilated in an instant, which is probably true. This is where it is revealed Yuta had actually eaten the last Sukuna finger and uses cleave on Sukuna, giving him a taste of his own medicine. As Yuji rushes him and spits blood in his face, they're getting really brutal in this fight. It's really awesome. All the panels in this chapter are really amazing. They are just beating on Sukuna again as he releases the hollow wicker basket, so he's able to use the world-cutting slash. He's given up a pretty big gamble here, as he can get hit by the Angel's Curse technique that Yuta has within the domain. And they see Sukuna trying to use the world dismantle, so they grab his arms, and Yuta rips his tongue out of his mouth and his stomach. It's just absolutely brutal, and they really came to fight here. Yuta is just such a beast. I can't give him enough props for this fight. Here they're able to hit Sukuna with Jacob's Ladder. Their plan has been executed absolutely perfectly, and they are able to reach Megumi. And Yuji speaks with Megumi and tells him to wake up. Although, unfortunately in this situation, Megumi has completely given up. He's had enough, and his soul is just completely crushed from the things Sukuna has done to him, and any will to live he's had has been extinguished. At this point, Sukuna recites what he needs to do the world-cutting slash, and hits Yuta dead center. Maki then stabs Sukuna through the chest. She's able to do this because she can enter domains, and also Yuta's domain was kind of breaking up at this point after being slashed. And this is a great introduction for Maki. We were really missing her from this fight, and her and Sukuna are about to go at it. In the meantime, Yuji is spoken to by Choso, who tells him to visualize his veins going all the way through his hands and to heal himself. I think this is more proof showing that Yuji probably has some blood manipulation power, but we've yet to see the full extent of that. Sukuna hides the incantations for the world-cutting slash inside of some rubble, which is really cool art by Gege, I think. But Maki is able to see the slash and avoid it, which is really interesting here. Maki and Sukuna continue to duke it out in the streets as they destroy buildings, and I think this fight's going to be really awesome once it gets animated. It is pretty short, but that's besides the point. Ino joins in and tries to help Maki after she got slashed, and we get probably the zestiest panel of the entire manga as Sukuna makes this strange face. I don't know, I really like the panel, but Ino goes flying back. He's no match for Sukuna here. And Kusakabe comes in with Nanami's tool, trying to help Maki for a minute, but he gets knocked away as well. Sukuna is absolutely excited to fight someone with this much physical prowess, and he says, at its core, sorcery is all skin and flesh, and yet that body of yours is all marrow and bone. Don't you get it? Your very existence denies what it means to be a sorcerer. The outcome of this fight will prove which is worth developing, sorcery or flesh and bone. You're the only one who has ever forced a role upon me. And at this point, Sukuna hits Maki with a black flash, just taking her out of the fight. But I think Sukuna was really interested to see if someone with a heavenly restriction could put up much of a fight, since Maki is the epitome of what that means. She's the most powerful person, other than Toji, at this point. And of course Toji's gone, so she holds that role. And Sukuna really wanted to see if she could put up much of a fight, and this black flash basically sealed it at the moment. And she is out of the fight, leaving only Kusakabe standing on the battlefield. Kusakabe opens his simple domain, which is called Evening Moonsword Drawing. He's able to extend the range of his simple domain, which is a pretty impressive feat, and he can also kind of sense Sukuna's slashes before they're coming, so he's able to dodge them while kind of nerfing Sukuna as well, and giving himself a bit of a curse energy boost. He kind of wonders to himself why he's trying so hard in this moment. Kusakabe is able to kick Sukuna away with impressive force into a bridge, which is really awesome. And he's fighting Sukuna up close and personal. And knowing Kusakabe, this is something that's a little out of character for him. In Shibuya, he didn't want to get involved with anything with Sukuna, but in this moment in Shinjuku, he is giving it his all. He's slashing at Sukuna, and he thinks possibly a reason he's doing this is because of his students. They put their lives on the line and were fighting Sukuna with everything they had, and why should he not do that? And this is a really powerful moment for Kusakabe and really character defining moment for him, in my opinion. Kusakabe repairs his katana with Moonlight Veil and goes for Sukuna's heart with the new sword, although Sukuna stops it with 2 fingers and says, "You couldn't be more transparent." Kusakabe takes this like a champ, says, "Well, damn," and boom, becomes another victim of Sukuna getting slashed in the chest. He looks pretty dead in this panel, but of course we have Shoko, so there is some hope. Wee Wee then appears to take Kusakabe off the battlefield, and Sukuna appears right behind him and says, "You're going rather bothersome." Right before Wee Wee gets snatched, Miguel comes and saves Wee Wee. Just a crazy inclusion with Miguel, but we're super happy to see him. It says the man who went toe-to-toe with Gojo Satoru joins the battle. He says, "You Japanese really ought to expand your horizons." And saying he went toe-to-toe with Gojo's a little crazy, seeing the last time those two met, it didn't end so well for Miguel, but he did survive, and he actually didn't get beat up too bad, which I think anyone getting hit by Gojo like this would be dead. So that gives him some credit. We see from Geto's group, LaRue has joined Miguel, and these two are about to take on Sukuna. LaRue's curse technique seems to be just like a giant hand, and that's actually what they use to retrieve Kusakabe. But he grabs Sukuna with it and throws him against a wall, as Miguel dodges all the slashes from Sukuna really gracefully. We then learn Miguel's curse technique is called Hakuna Lana, which is basically just a buff for himself, for his own physical capabilities, and also kind of debuffs whoever he's fighting. We learn that Gojo is actually racist. Just kidding, but he does make the point that Miguel has a different muscle mass, and which is rarer in Japan. And Miguel calls him out for this, saying, "I'm not special because I'm black, I'm special because I'm me," which is pretty awesome. This is definitely raising Miguel's stock. Choso then interrupts Sukuna and Miguel's fistfight with the piercing blood, as Sukuna hits Choso with some slashes. Yuji finally enters back into the fight, dropping in from the ceiling and smashing Sukuna in the face. Really glad to have Yuji back. He was out for a few chapters, but he's here again. And now we have this 3-way battle, well, I guess 4-way battle, because Maki rejoins the fight, surviving the Black Flash. Good for her. We're really happy to see her too. And this is when things go downhill again, because Sukuna hits LaRue with another Black Flash, and the implication with this Black Flash is Gojo was able to restore his reverse curse technique after he got a second Black Flash in, and that might happen with Sukuna. They pretty much have a god squad going up against Sukuna right now with Miguel, Yuji, Choso, and Maki, and LaRue if he's not dead, but I don't know if they're going to be able to beat Sukuna if he gets his reverse curse technique back, and that's kind of where I go into the next topic, is the merger. And I definitely think the merger is coming sooner than later, since Sukuna is probably going to get sick and tired of fighting everyone unless someone has a major power-up, which I think at this point in the story is unlikely. Unless it's going to be Yuji, we probably won't see a power-up, and we're kind of running out of characters that can return to fight. It would be great to see someone like Todo come back, but he's kind of out of commission. And Nobara, of course, but that's kind of just Cope is wishing for her to come back because she's been gone a very long time, and I don't know what she could do to help against Sukuna. So at this point in the story, I think what Gege has up next is the merger, and it's really up in the air who's going to fight the merger. I personally think Sukuna will probably start fighting it, and maybe he'll be in over his head about it and actually need assistance. And that would be kind of a crazy turn in the story. Personally, that's just what I think might happen. But it is really up in the air what we're going to see next. It's crazy getting these week-by-week fights, but I've enjoyed every minute of it. I've enjoyed every character who's come in. And I really hope that the characters who've gone down so far haven't all died. I know characters like Higuruma are probably gone for the time being. But it remains to be seen what's going to happen. And again, I do think the merger's coming, with Kenjaku gone and Sukuna kind of overstaying his welcome. I think that they're going to have to up the stakes and have Sukuna take his attention away from the main characters because at this rate he's going to kill everyone. So with that, I want to thank you all for watching. It means a lot. This is my first video if you haven't noticed, so I know I have a lot of things I need to improve on and kind of get better the next time around. But I'm super excited to be making videos on JJK and continue making videos on different topics moving forward. And yeah, again, I really appreciate all of you for watching this. Definitely let me know what you thought of the video down below or future ideas for videos that you would be interested in. And yeah, we have a chapter leaking this Thursday, hopefully, and I'm really excited to cover that as well and for the story to wrap up sometime this year. So yeah, thanks again, everyone, and take it easy.